And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Sunday, August 31st, 2025. And to set things up as of this Sunday later morning, we have low pressure out here through the lower central Bering with a front pushing in through the southwest coast that has gusty winds and bands of rain. We also have some moisture further south down along the Alaska Peninsula, some heavier rainfall potential with the upslope flow with those southerly winds along the Alaska Peninsula, and also western Bristol Bay. There could be some moderate to locally heavier rain as a result of that. Otherwise, VFR conditions for Monday morning are expected across the Panhandle along the Alcan border. We have a ridge of high pressure. Surface high is down here in the lower Gulf and North Pacific, but we also have in the mid-levels of the atmosphere a mid-upper level ridge that's going to keep the Panhandle generally warm and very warm and dry this upcoming week from Labor Day through at least Thursday, Friday. But to the west, we have IFR conditions over the northern Bering. And by Monday afternoon, low pressure sitting out in the central Bering, frontal system pushing inland. We have IFR conditions along the Alaska Range, especially the south-southeastward facing slopes. Eastern Kenai, southern part of Kodiak Island, and portions of the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, and then back up toward the Bering Strait and up toward Cape Lisburne and Point Hope. For Tuesday, low pressure is going to weaken and open up and pull across the Bering Strait and Seward Peninsula. And then there's going to be another area of low pressure coming up out of the northern Pacific, bringing moisture on up toward the western Gulf and Alaska Peninsula and areas as we go through midweek. But still, VFR conditions over the Panhandle Tuesday and along the Alcan border, though we will likely see some IFR Prince William Sound, the eastern Kenai. Again, those southeastward facing slopes of the Alaska Range, just northwest side there of Cook Inlet. And for Tuesday afternoon, as that low weakens and lifts across the Bering Strait and the Seward Peninsula, there'll be some IFR conditions, Nome on over toward Savunga. And then we find IFR conditions the lower southwest portion of the Gulf and along the east side of Kodiak Island. There will be additional moisture coming northeastward with a couple of waves of low pressure as we head through the latter half of the week. Still, though, the Panhandle VFR with very warm, dry conditions there, especially afternoon hours. Temperatures will be in the 70s in a number of spots. Can't even rule out an 80-degree reading there. So quite warm for this time of year to start off September. Now, checking the pass conditions, Anaktuvik Pass will generally be in MVFR conditions for Monday. So will Adigan Pass. And then as we drop down along the west arm of the Alaska Range, IFR conditions, we do have some upslope flow through those areas, southeasterly flow. So IFR Lake Clark Merrill, as well as Rainy Pass and rounding up through Windy Pass. As we get a little further east, Isabel may see some MVFR conditions in the morning Monday, giving way to VFR. And then further east, the drier conditions, the influence of that ridge of high pressure, Mentasta Pass VFR. Much of the Copper River Basin will see VFR conditions. There could be a period of MVFR in the morning, but otherwise Tanita Pass, VFR. And Portage, kind of a split. At least the eastern half of the pass starting out IFR, becoming MVFR on Labor Day. The areas out toward Prince William Sound will remain IFR, whereas the west entrance and just west of their MVFR conditions early Monday will give way to VFR conditions. And then in the northern Panhandle, Chilkoot and White will enjoy VFR conditions. So you can clearly see the influence of this warmer mid and upper level ridge. As we look over southeast, we have freezing levels above 14,000 feet over the Panhandle. So this is lending toward very stable atmosphere. You have compressional warming as a result of that high pressure sinking motion. That's really going to warm temperatures, 70s, even some 80-degree readings coming up this week. Back to the south and west, we have an area of low pressure out over the Bering Sea and a front coming into the west and southwestern areas, pushing moisture and some more rain into the western, even central interior. But you see ahead of the front, freezing levels have risen up to 12,000 feet along the western Gulf Coast, eastern Kenai, So again, this is definitely a warmer air mass that's out over the Gulf and back toward the southeast. And where we have the precipitation along and ahead of the frontal boundaries, we find moderate icing potential from anywhere in the Brooks Range, central interior, western Alaska Range, and on the west side through the southwest interior, Kuskokwim Valley down into Bristol Bay, and then the Alaska Peninsula. And we find those icing could be above 8,000 feet along the Brooks Range, above 10,000 feet central interior, above 12,000 feet Alaska Range, and in the southwest interior, and then above 14,000 feet Bristol Bay and on down toward the Alaska Peninsula. Upper level jet stream pattern, we have a ridge of high pressure sitting out here at 30,000 feet right over the northern portion of the Panhandle and out over the northeastern Gulf. And then we have the trough sitting out here over the Bering and 120 knot westerly jet max over the central eastern Aleutians, and winds aloft over 100 knots up through the western and northern mainland. Bringing it down to 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, a broad belt of wind of 40 to areas of 50 knots plus across much of the mainland, especially near and north and west of the Alaska Range, and extending down Shelikof Strait back through the Alaska Peninsula and then north of the Aleutians in the lower Bering Sea. And at 3,000 feet, still generally a broad area of winds anywhere from 30, 40 knots over the mainland, more focused here on the west arm of the Alaska Range, up here along the Lisburn Peninsula, and then a stronger area of low-level winds of 40 to 55 knots just south and southeast of the low circulation, and that's north of the Aleutians passing through the central Bering and in vicinity and heading toward the Pribilof. So turbulence on Monday, Labor Day. We find some up there along the spine of the Brooks Range, the Lisburn Peninsula, surface to 4,000 feet could be moderate turbulence, and then areas of moderate turbulence and perhaps some low-level wind shear in the vicinity of the frontal boundary all throughout areas of the southwest mainland interior, including along and just west of the Alaska Range. And then as we extend down through Kodiak Island and especially the northern central Alaska Peninsula, we're looking at moderate turbulence, surface to 4,000 feet, and then another area back out toward the central Aleutians. We could see moderate turbulence on Monday, surface to 3,000 feet.